All right, we're stuffed in the back of the trunk of the 3GP, and we are going to be pulling out this fuel pump and hanger assembly. So first few things to just quickly go over is I have a fire extinguisher in the back of the trunk. I also have a soaking wet rag. This is just in case something went horribly wrong, but the battery has been disconnected. It is fully isolated from the conductors, as well as we have relieved the fuel pressure on the line that's in there right now. So first, get those few safety things out of the way. After that, we are accessing the left-hand cover, which has the fuel pump underneath it. You can tell by the bolt here, the 17 millimeter, that is the pressure supply line up to the rail. And then you have the return lower pressure line coming back to the tank. After that, we have the electrical connector, which is a black wire and a yellow and black wire. And then you have the 10 millimeter nuts that hold the hanger assembly into the tank. So to get started, we are going to pull off that low pressure return line. It just has one of those clamps on it. So let's get going. Sometimes these over the years no longer like to cooperate. Sometimes I use a pair of linesman pliers because those force them to compliance. Once you get it over, there you go. You can kind of feel where the bump is. There it is. So then after that, normally what I will do, a quick little trick, instead of ripping up your hoses, is I take one of these picks and I just put it into the hose part and then work it around, just so you're not grabbing the hose and reefing on it with a pair of pliers, which often hurts the hose. That just breaks that surface tension between the hose and the piece, and then we'll just push it up, 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 up. Try not to hurt ourselves. Nobody likes to do that. There we go. Okay. So after we have that off, we're going to have a little bit of fuel coming out of there, but it's not the end of the world. You can just push it to the side a bit. It's going to get in your way. Don't worry about it. All right, so you got a little bit of fuel there. Shouldn't be too much. If there was a lot, wipe it up with a rag. Okay, after that, we will bust this 17 loose. Now underneath here, you're going to have some crush washers. You should generally replace them, but try not to lose them. So there is the banjo style fitting. There's one of the crush washers, and the other one will be underneath the hose. So we are just going to lift that up. Now, unfortunately, this car has a full tank of fuel in it right now, which is not ideal, but whatever. All right, so there's the other washer that you're looking for. So there's two of those in there. Just take it and put it to the side. So we've got the supply line off, we've got the return line off. You can take the connector off. Now beforehand, I've gone through here and cleaned this up with some compressed air and some brake clean, just to ensure that no contaminants are getting in there. So as you can see in there, there's the connector, and we're just gonna pop that off. You just press it down and pull it out. That's the connector that we're talking about. And that supplies the power to your fuel pump right there. So we'll just push that off to the side. Don't need that, don't need that, don't need any of those. And now, we'll just dry our hands off a little bit. And I cracked these loose, just so you didn't get to see me hurting myself. So, I'm going to take off all the little tens. Just work your way around. You're going to want a 1/4-inch drive ratchet with a short extension, a 3-inch extension, and a swivel flex end. And then you can break them loose, pull them out. They shouldn't be too bad. I do recommend wearing a glove while you do this. For one thing, this sticky black sealant loves to stay attached to you for a couple of days. So let's get this other one out. Work our way around. Again, you can try and do this in an open space so you're not breathing fumes constantly. Some circulation. And let's get this one. Now when this comes out, you're going to make a little bit of a mess with some fuel, especially if you're doing it like this one, which has a full tank of fuel, which I normally don't advise doing, but it's just the way it worked out. So, one more. And I can't see it because I'm trying to stay out of the camera. So, you should have a total of 6 of these little 10mm nuts right there. And after you have them all out, we're just going to try and rock the hanger loose a little bit. Oh yeah, it's loose. Okay, so I'm just going to get repositioned in this trunk so that we can pull this hanger out and not get fuel absolutely everywhere. So I'm going to stop this for a second and we will carry on once I get another rag. Okay, now that we've moved everything out of the way, we got ourselves a bucket to pull this pump out and put it into once we get it out so we don't get fuel everywhere. We are going to try and extract the pump and hanger out of the tank and through the access panel. Now, no matter how many times you do this, it often is a pain in the butt, but I find that if you pull it up and you rotate it counterclockwise, it will work its way out. So this might take a few moments, it might go really quick, but I will show you what I do. So let's start twisting this thing out. So everything's loose, lift it up. There is a rubber seal on the inside, be careful not to damage it. Move those lines out of the way. As you bring it up, start turning it counterclockwise. And you don't have to be super gentle with it. Ah, there we go. Okay, so you don't have to be super gentle with it, but try not to force it too bad. So once we get it up, we got to try and bring out the filter out of the bag. So there it is. So we're going to put it in this bucket, and then we're going to take it to the bench. So I'll just let you see it come out. There's the filter, the bag at the bottom. There's the whole pump out. All right, let's put it in the bucket so we don't get fuel everywhere. All right, let's take it up to the bench and let's change this pump and get it all ready to go back in. So while we're doing this though, I would normally cover up that hole just to make sure nothing falls in there. All right, let's move to the bench. Okay, now that we have the pump and hanger assembly on the bench, we're going to start disassembling it to replace the pump. First thing I will do is pull these compression clamps off so that we can start getting this apart. Now I already popped these off just to make it easier to show you, but these little protector caps, which protect the ring terminal, are held on by a tiny little tang that is just a pressure fit. If you just slip a pick in there, pop it off, it'll come right off and give you access to the terminal. So the blue is the positive terminal and it is a 7mm. So we'll just break it loose, pull off the nut, pull off the ring terminal, flip it over, The ground is a 8mm. Loosen that off, pull it out, pull off the ring terminal. And after that, I'll normally bend the hanger a little bit to pop the isolator out, like so. And then we'll pull out the pump. Okay. So once we have the pump out, and we find the bolt we dropped, we'll put that to the side. Here's the pump. We can take the hose off. And then after you have that off, you can take this little rubber isolator off the bottom. We're going to keep that. Probably going to reuse it. Put that up there too. So on the bottom here, attaching the bag filter, not that it really matters because we're going to get rid of this, you have a little clip that is retaining that. If you just take a little flathead screwdriver and work your way around, you can pop that off. If you were just going to replace the filter, that's how you would do it. Put the new bag filter on and then put that tang back on. So that's off. There's the old pump. It has served its life. When you go to order your new pump, you are going to probably have the option between ordering one with the ring terminal connectors or as a different plug style connector. We're going to be using a plug style connector, and I'm going to bring that over to the bench and we will show you that in just a second. With the hanger itself, I'm just going to pull off the rubber isolator. This only goes on one way, so don't worry about getting it wrong. When you put it back on, we're going to clean it up. And then on there, you just pull off the compression connectors. Okay, with the hanger now separated from the pump, we're going to work on the electrical connections for a moment. So the new style pump that we're going to use is a plug connector with two tails that we are going to have to splice to the existing wires. Now for the blue wire, we are going to make a solder connection because I like solder connections over butt connections. I know that the internet fights over this a lot, but I think the downfall with solder is the person doing the soldering. So we'll show you quickly how to make a good solder connection for that positive terminal, which we're going to change and attach to this new connector. And then with the ground connection, I'll take 2 seconds to say that off camera I removed the original bolt. The screw that originally is in there, it's an M4 by 0.7, and when it's pushed through or screwed through into the hanger, it is then peened on the other side to make sure that it stays secure. I'm upsizing it to accommodate the larger ring terminal that I'm putting on the larger conductor, just to give us a larger ground conduction. It's not necessary, but do check that. If it is damaged, you might want to replace it, and it's as easy as I'll take out the fastener that I put in there. The fastener that I put in there is an M5 by 0.8, and it's just a screw that has a lock washer and a washer so that it stays secured and it doesn't back off. And all we're going to do with the hanger here is take our tap and run it through there. You don't even have to drill it. It is small enough that you can just run that tap right through it, give you the new thread pattern, and then you'll be able to thread in your new fastener in order to make the ground connection. So that's what we're going to do with the ground. And now we're going to get set up to do the positive connection with a solder joint. So we're going to pull off the connector that's holding that in there, and then we're going to cut into that wire and we're going to splice it, and I'll show you how to solder it correctly, as I do not like using butt joint connectors. So let's get set up. We'll get the soldering iron out. Let's do that now. Okay, we're going to show you making that solder connection. We're also going to show you how we get it set up to figure out how long the conductors need to be. Now, you're probably going to be using just a OEM or aftermarket replacement pump with the pig style connector that I'm talking about. There's nothing wrong with this. This is, most of you are going to be using this, but in this video, all I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using an AEM 340 pump. This is an upgraded high flow pump. I have an H22 in my 3rd gen Prelude. This is way more than it actually needs, but along the line we may do some other things on the channel and show you what I got going on with that. So essentially it's the same packaging, same size, sort of shape, all the same connections. It just has a larger conductor coming off of the connector. So the first thing that I will do is select the appropriate bottom isolator piece. The AEM doesn't come with one, so you can use the old one, or I'm using the one out of the aftermarket OE replacement. So I'm just going to pop that on there, and then we're going to put it in the hanger, find the spot that it sits. It's going to sit like that. The bag filter is going to connect right there. We're going to hook up the hose right in between there, but for now we're going to do the electrical connections. So all we want to do is make sure we give ourselves a little bit of extra slack when making these connections. We don't want a lot of wire inside the tank, but we also don't want to make it really short and hard to work with. So set it up. I will normally make an S bend in there so we can connect to the blue wire, something like that, and then we'll do the black one as well. We'll copy it and it can hook to the ground right there. Just like pipes that flow fluid, electrical conductors like nice smooth bends, so try to avoid kinking anything. So I'll just pull that off to the side for a second. So the original conductor, I'll tell you how long it is. The original conductor is about 7 inches long, and we are going to cut them both down to 5 inches. So I cut one of them just to show me where I needed to make the other cut. We're going to cut them from 7 to 5, so let's make the other cut. And while you're working with the pump, make sure you keep the protective guard on it. You don't want to get anything in the pump. So we'll cut a little bit of the pigtail off. Now that we know how long we need it to be, we'll just pop that connector out. Sometimes these things are non-cooperative. There we go. Okay, put the pump to the side. So we are going to install a ring terminal on the end of that black wire. So we are going to take it and we are going to take off just a little bit off the end, about like that. And we have one of these blue range terminal connectors. They're for 16 to 14 gauge wire. I just want to make sure we got the right length. So we will take it, we'll put it in, and you can see it should push up to the installation and butt through just a little bit. And to make sure that that's not going to be a problem, we will find the old ground wire, get the screw, and yeah, so it's an appropriate size connector for that screw as well. So after we have that, you're gonna crimp it. Now you can use your regular style crimps. You probably have something like that. I am going to use my fancier crimps. So all I'm gonna do is put it in them, get it started. It's a locking style ratcheting crimper. So put it in the blue space, get it all set up, Just trying to show you what we're doing. Okay. Then we'll take the conductor, push it into the ring terminal like so, and then we're just gonna crimp it, pop it out, flatten it, and there you go. We have a perfect connection for our ground, nice and tight. Okay, so I'm gonna strip the red wire and cut off the blue wire on the hanger and get it set up here in my little apparatus, and then we're gonna start soldering because that's gonna take just a few seconds to get set up. So let me get set up and then we'll keep going. All right, we've got the wires connected, not in the apparatus, just above the hanger. So the blue wire I have shortened to 3 inches, and the red wire we did to 5. And now we have opened those wires up, exposed them, and we've just simply pushed the conductors, those individual strands, into each other, and then twisted them lightly with our hands in order to make them all together. Now I've got the soldering iron going in the background. You want to make sure it's good and hot before you go and do this. You don't want to hold it to it while it's heating up. Make sure it gets good and hot. And check it to make sure. I've got a gas powered one here, so we're going to go in underneath the conductor, push it up against the back of the conductor, and then we are going to apply pressure with the solder from the top, and we are going to wait until it melts into the actual conductors. So and there we go. It's all together. And it should be good for years to come. So we'll let that cool down for 2 seconds. All I'm going to do now is just kind of crimp a little bit of the few stray ends that may have come out while we were doing that. Because the next thing we're going to do, which I should have said something beforehand, is we're going to put the shrink wrap over top of it. But first, I just want to get all those little loose strands out of the way. There we go. So, yeah. So there is the connection, soldered all the way around. So it is not cold soldered. You have to make sure you heat it up before you apply the solder to the conductor, or else you will get a cold joint, and that is where people have failures and improper connections. So if you do it right, you should never have an issue. All right, so now that we got that together, we are going to take the little piece of shrink wrap I have first, which we'll put it over the middle. And normally, I'll just use my soldering iron again. I'm gonna put this so you can see it. We'll just hold it up, and then we'll just heat the shrink wrap up. And I normally do 2 pieces of shrink wrap. So we have the first one on there. First one right there. And then we'll apply a second one over the top of it. Just work our way along, twist it around. There we go. Okay, so now we have a beautiful connection that has been properly soldered. It has 2 layers of shrink wrap, and that should keep it safe while it's inside the tank. So, all right, I'm going to get repositioned, and we will start putting the pump back into place. Okay, now that we have the pigtail connections made, and I've attached the ground back to its original location, we've made the S-bend to fit it in. I've also reattached the protective coating that they put over the positive conductor, as well as the little connector to clip it to the hanger piece. So at this point, if you were going to put back in an OEM style pump, we would take the OEM pump with the replacement isolator. You would attach your new filter right there, put the little retaining clip on it, put the isolator on it, and then just take it, push it into the hanger, and then attach the fuel line, attach the electrical connector, and you would be good to go. But because we are going to put in the AEM one, we're going to do something just slightly different. So ignore if you're doing the OEM one, that's all you got to do. If you're doing the AEM one, there is a few small differences. First being, this part of the hanger that accepts the rubber isolator needs to be opened up just a little bit. So open it up, just tweak it a little bit with the 2 big screwdrivers or some pry bars. Open it up. Getting the bag filter on, I find these are sometimes a pain, but you got the little clip in there, push the bag filter on. This grommet, this isolator pad, will have to be cut back as well as cut open in the middle in order to fit underneath and put it back into place where it needs to go. It's going to take a few minutes for you just to fight with it a little bit, but try and make it fit as nicely as possible. And then you should end up with the isolator in there, the bag filter attached, and then we will put it into the hanger now that we've expanded the hanger a little bit. We'll fit it in there just like so. Okay, so you're going to end up with like that. The pump will look just like that, and our pigtail connector will plug right in. So before we get it in for the final time, we are going to connect the hose, which I have cut down to 2 1/4 inches. So you can just take off the protector cap. Make sure you put back on these little clips. You can use the ones that are provided with you, which are the screw style worm gear terminals, or you can just use these pressure ones. I'm just going to use the pressure ones. So we're going to take the hose. Actually, it's probably easier just to pop this out and do that. Getting ahead of myself. So pop this out. Take the hose and push it on as far as you can get it. We're going to try and bottom it all the way out, because that's what I measured for. Okay, so for us, we have bottomed it all the way to the bottom. We'll take one of the connectors, one of the crimps, and we will put it onto the hose, just like that. There we go. Then we can take this and push it on. Until we get it to where we want it. Fight with it a little bit. Sometimes it can be a pain in the butt. The OEM one is made to fit a little nicer. This 340, it fits, but it just takes a little more time to talk nice to it. It'll take fighting with it a little bit to get it into submission, but eventually you should get to it looking like that, where the isolator pad is sitting nicely in the socket. The bag filter is clear of the apparatus, and everything's fitting the way it should be. So once we have it in, we have the hose connected, we can put that other clamp on. And then you can line it up if you're feeling OCD. Get it all there. So I've got it clamped. I've got it in. We're going to take our electrical connector. It's often easier to do before you put it in, but you can get it in there. Just snake it around, click it in, and we're just going to move these wires a little bit, get into a place we like. Again, being careful not to kink them too much. Try and give them nice smooth curves so it looks like it's flowing nicely. We will push that retaining clip back in on our positive conductor. I want to fight you a little bit. But once you got it, you should have it in like that. And all the wires are nicely bent around. I'll just try and get a better view of this. So we've got the wire running up there, bending around the top, coming back and connecting to the blue wire. We've got the ground making us bend into the connector as well. We've reinstalled the abrasion resistant wrapping, and we have installed the clip that holds the conductor. So there we go. There is the AEM 340 in there. In the hanger, we just modified the rubber isolator. We had to expand the hanger itself right there. And then we did the exact same thing that we did for the OEM pump, which is change the ground strap and change the positive connector. So once you have it all together like this, looking good, everything's in there, everything's tidy, we are going to take this now and we are going to put it back in the tank, and we're going to hook it up and it should be good to go. So let's move back over to the car and we will drop this in the tank. All right, we're all set up back in the trunk. We've got everything ready to go. And just before I got in here, I cleaned up the hanger plate on the top and reinstalled the rubber isolator seal. So just make sure that's cleaned off and in good condition, and make sure it's in place. It only goes in one way. There's a couple of tabs that pull through. You just try it until you get it lined up properly. Okay, so now that we have this all open, we've cleaned off a little bit of the areas that need it. We are going to try and put this pump in. Let's see how this goes. There we go. Just move those hoses out of the way. And again, just keep turning it until you get it. And then we're just going to try and line up the studs like that. There we go. The studs are all lined up. It should sit in nice and easy. So I'm just going to put a couple of the 10s on to hold it in place and to seal in all the fumes. So just start threading the 10s on, and then we will make the connections. So these little 10mm nuts, if you were gonna torque them, they get torqued to 4 foot-pounds, but I don't recommend you do that because most people don't have an accurate enough torque wrench and they end up stripping them. So just use a 1/4 inch drive ratchet. with an extension and a swivel, and just tighten them until they are adequately taut. You can always tighten them more if you need to, but 4 foot-pounds is next to nothing. So there we go. Get these all on. Doing this by feel. I can't really see in there while I have the camera looking. It's going all right. Okay. So once you got all those bolts on, we're just gonna go around the pattern until they go taut. Alright, let's put the hoses on and then we'll do a final tightening. So, I'm just going to move around. So I can get down here. So we'll grab the return line. I'll just wiggle it on. There you go. Pops into place. Grab some pliers. Sometimes these clamps just don't like to move. But it'll go. There we go. Just push that down like that. Make sure it's over the nub on the end. Now, I put a little grommet in here to keep anything from falling in place. It's a good idea if you have one, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. Just make sure you clean everything out. So, now we're going to put on that banjo bolt, and this is where you should replace those crush washers. So we're going to put one underneath and one on top. Put it into place. Now this bolt, they normally get torqued to about 16 foot-pounds, but again, I don't recommend really using the torque wrench. Just use a 3/8 drive ratchet and just give it a few cranks. And then turn the pump on when it's ready to go and come back here and see if it's leaking. If it's not leaking, it's tight. And if it is leaking, then tighten it up a little bit more. But if you try and torque on it too much, you could break it off. So you don't want to do that. Okay, we'll just go around these 10s again. Like I said, 4 foot-pounds is nothing, so just go around the circle, make sure they're all tight. And I can't see where I'm going here. Okay, once those are all tight, grab our electrical connector, plug it in, give it a wiggle, it's all connected, excellent, pull the cover on, there we go. Okay, So at this point, I would go and hook up the battery and turn the ignition to the on position. Make sure the relay is clicking and make sure that the pump is turning on, and just listen for it cycling. As long as it's turning on, we should be good to go, and there's no fuel leaking anywhere. Then we will try cranking it and starting and firing it up. If there was a leak, then we would fix that by tightening the banjo bolt or the clamp, and then we would turn the car back on and give it another try. So there we go. We have put in the new fuel pump. Whether or not you're using an AEM 340 or you're using an OEM pump, that is the process. We've gone through it. Maybe we'll just go over a few things on the bench in a minute here. I'm just going to try and make sure the pump is working, and then we will have some closing comments. All right, we're back up on the bench and everything is in the car and working once again. The pump is functioning perfectly. You will notice that if you do switch over to the AEM 340, that the pump does make a little extra noise, but if you have a full interior in your car, it's really nothing that you're ever going to hear. So there's no real downside to using that pump. It's a great pump. So I just figured we'd go over the last few closing remarks, and that being that if you are looking to do this job and you want to make it as easy as possible and you're just doing a direct replacement, make sure you look for a pump that has the ring terminals, and that will save you the step of having to solder in the pigtail. It's not the end of the world if you do have to do the pigtail. We showed you how to do that, but if you just want a direct drop in, you want the one with the ring terminals. If you do use an aftermarket one with the pigtail like we used, again, we showed you how to tie that in, where to terminate it, how to connect it. Or you can throw in the AEM 340 if you're looking for a little extra flow and you plan to do some additional work to your vehicle in the future. It's not necessary, but it is a great pump. They last for a long time, and I really do like them. So after you've got that all back together, you are going to make sure you put on the caps. I didn't need to take this one off, but I'm going to powder coat them. So the one on the left is the one, if you're facing into the trunk, that's the one you're going to pull off, and that's the one you're going to put back on. Make sure it's sealed up good after you've completed everything. And yeah, so that is the replacement of the fuel pump in a 1990 Honda Prelude. Now, this will work for most other Hondas and Acuras of that same era. The process is very similar, and if you follow through, it should be good for years to come. So thanks for hanging out with me, and all the best, and keep those classic Hondas rolling.